Shabbat Shalom. There's a beloved children's character that perhaps many of you remember and know, Amelia Bedelia. Amelia Bedelia is famous for taking instructions very literally. If someone told her to dress the chicken, she might put tiny claws on the chicken. If someone says, draw the drapes, she might sit down and literally sketch them. And of course, as you can imagine, the result is chaos. But if we look more carefully at her character, Amelia Bedelia isn't careless or lazy, quite the opposite. She is trying very, very, very hard to do exactly what she is told. She listens carefully, she follows instructions faithfully, she puts her whole heart into the work. The problem isn't that she isn't trying. The problem is that communications and instructions can be complicated sometimes. I remember reading Amelia Bedelia to my daughter in Uganda for the first time, and I found it silly, and some places I chuckled and giggled, but some places I did not understand. Because the instructions of dust the furniture did not make its way to Uganda. We don't say that. And I feel like if I was an Amelia Bedelia, I would do the same thing. I found Amelia Bedelia's character relevant to this week's Torah portions, which is so full of instructions. This week we read the Dao portion of Parashat Vayekel Pekudei, which brings the book of Exodus to its conclusions. These two portions, and the past several, and also a few coming up, are filled with detailed instructions of building the Mishkan, the portable sanctuary the Israelites carry with them in the wilderness. It was the first communal building project of the Israelites as a free people, as a people in transition, as a people yearning for a better place, a better home. The Torah describes many details about building this portable sanctuary: measurements of wood, description of fabric, precise instructions about colors, exactly where to press the gold and where to put the silver. Sometimes people joke that this is the ancient text. This ancient text reads like a furniture assembly manual, or perhaps like a furniture assembly manual from IKEA, to be precise. Could you imagine what Amelia Bedelia would do to these instructions? Let's think of keep Shabbat. What would Amelia Bedelia do? Think about maybe anoint the priests. What would she do? But the Torah's attention to detail may be telling us something important, that sacred spaces do not just appear. It requires to be built carefully, intentionally, and all of us together. It's also important to remember the context of this week's Torah portion. Where are we in the Torah? Just before this moment came the disaster of the golden calf. The people had taken their creativity, their gold, and their energy and directed it towards something our tradition has characterized as destructive and a very grave sin of building the golden calf as a replacement for Moses and the golden calf for people to worship. They had taken the idea of God dwelling among them quite literally and maybe misunderstood it. But now they've been given a second chance. At the beginning of the parasha, Moses gathers the entire community of Israel again. We read that Moses assembled the whole community of Israel and said to them, "These are the things that Adonai has commanded you to do." At first glance, you're like, not again. More instructions, of course. But when we look at the meaning of the word vayechel, which means to assemble, Moses gathers the community back to the drawing board. And this time, people's creativity will be directed towards something holy. The Torah tells us that the Israelites, all men and women whose hearts moved them to bring anything for the work of Adonai through Moses, that Adonai had commanded through Moses, brought it of free offering to Adonai. According to the Midrash, and Rabbi Heath spoke about this a little bit, the generosity became so great that Moses eventually and Bezalel eventually told the people to stop bringing these gifts because there was already enough people. Yes, imagine hearing that from the synagogue. Friends, please stop donating. We have too much already. That would be a true wilderness miracle. However, as we learn from this Torah portion and more, this was not what was important. What was important was not simply the abundance of materials. What was important was that the Israelites' hearts moved them towards building something, a communal place, and that the divine presence would dwell among them. Among the builders was a master artisan, Bezalel, and some of you might know we have a very prestigious school in Jerusalem named after Bezalel, the Bezalel School of Arts and Crafts. The Torah tells us that Bezalel was filled with God's wisdom and understanding and skills. The rabbis described Bezalel that he knew and combined letters which were used to create the world, the heavens and earth. In other words, Bezalel understood not only the instructions, but the deeper meaning behind them. He could take words and transform them into beautiful art. But what about the Amelia Baderias of the Israel community? It's easy to laugh at her misunderstanding. I know I did. But her character reveals something deeply human. We all hear instructions differently. Some people think visually, some people think literally, some people need examples, some of us need context. The Mishkan was not built by one person. It was built by an entire community. Some people donated materials, some people spun thread and goat's hair, some people designed, some people were craftsmen and women, some people like Bezalel helped translate divine instructions into reality. The Mishkan requires many different kinds of minds, of heart, and many different kinds of talent. And beautifully, Amelia Baderia belongs in this community as well. Because even though she sometimes misunderstands instructions, she also brings something very valuable: dedication and a willingness to try and to do better. Her offerings are valuable. There is another lesson to be learned in this week's Torah portion as well. The Mishkan requires not only skilled builders, it requires clear communications, instructions to be explained, ideas to be shared. People had to listen to one another. The rabbis of the Talmud understood this concept deeply. And the Talmud is full of debates, quotes, and multiple interpretations. You know, the two Jews, three opinions kind of thing. Judaism has never expected everyone to understand things exactly the same way, or even be in community exactly the same way. At the very end of the book of Exodus, once the Mishkan is finally finished, something extraordinary happens. The cloud covers the tent of meeting, and the presence of God fills the Mishkan. But this was only after people worked together, each contributing in their own way. Then were they filled with the divine presence. Today, we do not build a sanctuary of acacia wood and gold. Maybe we should, but we are still building sacred community. Some people organize, some people teach, some people bring gifts of music, some people bring food, some people donate, some people show up and bring warmth and presence, and some people do all the above. But each contribution matters, and each person hears and understands this call differently. And in some way, we are all a little bit like Amelia Baderia. We are all trying to understand the instructions that God, that life gives us. Sometimes we misunderstand them. Sometimes we need help interpreting them. And sometimes we discover that the instructions only make sense when we work together. When we build together, our lives are grounded. They are filled with meaning and shared vision and a hope for the future. And we begin to see the world around us and even within each of us filled with divine presence. I want to echo earlier on Rabbi Heath's gratitude to all of you and to all of us, Betham members, non-members, new and long-term friends of Betham members, for continuing to build this sacred community. Thank you for all your contributions and your sacred work. And especially tonight, thank you for showing up, even though there are voices trying to discourage us from congregating. When we finish reading any book of Torah, as we do the book of Exodus this weekend, this Shabbat, we proclaim loudly, Chazak, Chazak, Venit, Chazek. Strength, strength, may we be strengthened. May we all be strengthened in the study and living words of Torah and in our sacred obligation to perform mitzvot in the world. May we all be strengthened in our commitment to one another, to each other, as we continue the work of building the Mishkan of our own time. Shabbat Shalom.